My late son's daughter-in-law left her daughter with me just for one day and disappeared for 9 years. When she found out about the inheritance her son had left his granddaughter, she returned with the police accusing me of kidnapping. But in court, I received an envelope. The judge, shocked, asked, "Does she know?" I replied, "Not yet." Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. The doorbell rang at 7:30 on a Tuesday morning, which should have been my first warning. Nobody rings doorbells that early unless they're selling something desperate or delivering bad news. I opened the door expecting a package. Instead, I got 2 police officers and a ghost. Mr. Harrison, the older detective badge reading Rivers, had that careful tone cops use when they think you might run. "We need to talk about your granddaughter, Sophia." Behind them stood Jennifer, my son's widow, the woman who'd vanished 9 years ago, like smoke and wind. She had tears streaming down her face, the kind that looked rehearsed in a mirror. I'd spent 40 years as an accountant, learning to spot fraudulent entries in ledgers. Fraudulent tires weren't much different. My baby Jennifer sobbed, reaching past the officers like she was auditioning for a drama series. "Where's my baby?" I heard footsteps behind me. Sophia, 13 now, and getting ready for school, appeared in the hallway with her backpack. She froze when she saw the woman at the door. "Grandpa." Her voice was small, uncertain. Who is that? Jennifer's performance kicked into high gear. "Sophia." "Oh my God, Sophia. Baby, it's me. It's Mommy." I watched my granddaughter's face. She didn't recognize her own mother. Why would she? Sophia was 4 when Jennifer left. Now she was 13, and the woman at my door was a stranger. Mr. Harrison, Detective Rivers continued, "There's been a report filed about child abduction. We need to sort this out." I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not panic. I'd been waiting for this moment for years. I'd prepared for it. But standing there watching Jennifer play the grieving mother, while Sophia pressed herself against my side, the calculated cruelty of it hit me fresh. "Of course, Detective." I kept my voice level, reasonable. "Please come in. This should be interesting." I let them into my living room, the same room where Sophia had learned to read, where we'd built blanket forts, where she'd cried when she finally understood her mother wasn't coming back. Jennifer walked in like she owned the place. Her eyes darting around, cataloging everything, probably calculating value. Old habits. "I've been searching for her for years," Jennifer told the detective, her voice breaking perfectly on cue. "He took her from me. I just went away for a few days, and when I came back, they were gone." I almost laughed. The audacity was impressive, really. If you're going to lie, lie big. She'd learned that somewhere. "Is that so?" I settled into my chair, the one I'd sat in every night reading bedtime stories to the child Jennifer had abandoned. "Detective, I have documentation. Legal guardianship papers, court orders, all properly filed with the state of California. Would you like to see them?" The detective's expression shifted slightly. He'd been expecting a kidnapper, maybe a custody dispute. He wasn't expecting paperwork. Jennifer's tears dried up fast. "Those papers are fake. He tricked me." Ma'am." Detective Rivers held up a hand. "Let's slow down." "Mr. Harrison, do you have these documents available in my study? Would you like me to get them, or would you prefer to accompany me?" Rivers nodded to his partner, who followed me. Jennifer stayed in the living room with Sophia trying to approach her. I heard my granddaughter's voice, shaky but firm. "Please don't come near me. I don't know you." That's my girl, I thought. 9 years I'd raised her. 9 years of school plays and piano recital, and teaching her that she didn't have to accept anyone's claims on her just because they demanded it. In my study, I pulled out the file I'd kept current and organized. Every document, every court filing, every piece of evidence of Jennifer's abandonment. The officer flipped through it with growing comprehension. "This is pretty thorough," he said. "I'm an accountant," I replied. "Documentation is what I do." Back in the living room, Jennifer was in full victim mode. He poisoned her against me. Look at her. She doesn't even know her own mother. That's because you left when I was 4, Sophia said quietly. She was scared. I could see it in the way she gripped her backpack straps, but she wasn't backing down. Grandpa showed me pictures so I wouldn't forget what you looked like. But you never called, not once. The detective was reading through my documents now, his expression hardening. Jennifer noticed. This is all lies. She tried again. I was sick. I was traumatized from my husband's death. I'm Mrs. Harrison. Detective Rivers looked up. These are certified court documents from 2016. That's 9 years ago. Medina, I corrected softly. She's Mrs. Medina now. Remarried. Started a whole new life in Sacramento. I smiled, and I knew it didn't reach my eyes. How touching that she's remembered she has a daughter after all this time. What brought you back? Jennifer's sudden attack of maternal instinct. Her face flushed. I saw something flicker in her eyes. Fear, maybe, or calculation. She knew I knew something. She just didn't know what yet. This isn't over, she said, her voice dropping, the sob story going hard. I'm her mother. I have rights. No, I said pleasantly. You really don't. Detective Rivers handed me back my documents. Mr. Harrison will need you to come to the station, file a full report about the situation. Ma'am, you too. He looked at Jennifer with considerably less sympathy than he'd arrived with. If you want to pursue this, it'll go through family court. Jennifer's jaw clenched. Fine. I'll see you in court, Robert. And I'll see you too, baby. She reached toward Sophia, who stepped behind me. After they left, Sophia looked up at me. Grandpa, is she going to take me away? I put my hand on her shoulder, feeling the weight of every promise I'd made to this child over 9 years. Not a chance, sweetheart. Not a chance. But in my mind, I was already 10 steps ahead, seeing the chessboard clearly. Jennifer hadn't come back out of love. People like her didn't operate on love. They operated on greed, which meant she'd learned about the money. And if she thought she could walk back into Sophia's life after 9 years of silence and claim what my son had left behind, she was about to learn an expensive lesson in consequences. I'd been preparing for this day since 2016. Since the day I'd sat in a lawyer's office and made sure every possible angle was covered, every escape route blocked. Jennifer wanted a court battle. She was going to get one. The memories hit me hardest at night. After Sophia had gone to bed, after I'd checked her room 3 times to make sure she was really there, really safe, that's when my mind dragged me back to December 2015. It started with a knock on the door late afternoon right before Christmas. Jennifer stood on my porch with little Sophia bundled in a pink winter coat, her small hand gripping her mother's fingers. Robert, I'm so sorry to ask this. Jennifer's eyes were red from crying, I thought. Then now I knew better. My aunt in Sacramento is sick, really sick. I need to go see her, but I can't take Sophia. It's just for 1 day, 2 at most. Can you watch her? Sophia had looked up at me with Stephen's eyes, my son's eyes, and I'd melted like I always did. Of course I'd said, Sophia and I will be fine. Won't we, princess? She'd nodded already, reaching for me. Even at 4, she'd loved coming to Grandpa's house. I had cookies and cartoons and endless patience for her questions. Jennifer had hugged her quickly, too quickly, I realized later, and promised to call. I'll be back tomorrow, baby. Be good for Grandpa. That was the last thing she'd said to her daughter for 9 years. Tomorrow came. No Jennifer, no phone call. I tried her cell straight to voicemail. I called her apartment disconnected. By day 3, Sophia was asking when Mommy was coming home, and I was running out of gentle lies. Soon, Princess Mommy's aunt is very sick. She needs to stay a little longer. By day 7, Sophia had stopped asking. By day 14, I'd hired a private investigator. The report came back in January. Jennifer Harrison had moved to Sacramento with a man named Curtis Medina. New apartment, new job, new life. The investigator included photos. Jennifer and Curtis at a restaurant laughing. Jennifer at a New Year's party, champagne in hand. Jennifer posting on social media about fresh starts and new beginnings. No mention of a daughter, not one. I'd sat in my study holding that report, feeling something break and reform inside me. My son Stephen had died 2 years earlier in a car accident, and I'd watched Jennifer struggle with single motherhood. I'd tried to help pay for childcare, covered bills, gave her space to grieve, but I'd missed the signs. The way she looked at Sophia sometimes like the child was an anchor she wanted to cut loose. The way she'd talk about her life before Stephen died, before Sophia existed, she hadn't left because she was traumatized. She left because she wanted to. The hardest part was explaining it to Sophia. She was too young to understand abandonment, too young to understand that her mother had chosen a man over her daughter. Mommy's not coming back. I'd finally told her in February, holding her while she cried, but I'm here. I'll always be here. I promise. She looked up at me with those eyes, Stephen's eyes, trusting and scared. Forever. Forever. I'd promised. And I'd meant it. I remembered taking her to her first day of kindergarten. Jennifer should have been there. I remembered her first piano recital. Jennifer should have been there. I remembered teaching her to ride a bike, reading her bedtime stories, helping with homework, wiping away tears after playground fights. All the moments Jennifer had traded for a fresh start and a new husband. The transformation from grandson to guardian hadn't been easy. I'd been retired, looking forward to quiet years of fishing and reading. Instead, I got PTA meetings and permission slips and learning to braid hair from YouTube videos. But somewhere in the chaos of those early months, I'd made a decision. If Jennifer was gone, truly gone, then I needed to make it legal. Protect Sophia. Protect what Stephen had left for his daughter. That's when I'd called the lawyer. Victoria Gray had been practical, efficient, thorough. You need full legal guardianship, she told me. But we need to cover all bases. If the mother ever comes back, she could challenge it. What if she voluntarily gives up her rights? Victoria had raised an eyebrow. If she'd do that, you'd have an ironclad case. I'd thought about it for a week. Jennifer had made her choice clear by her actions. But I needed it in writing. I needed her to say on record that she didn't want her daughter. So I'd had Victoria write a letter and offer, come back and be a mother with support and resources, or voluntarily terminate your parental rights and let Sophia have stability. Jennifer had taken option 2 without hesitation. I remembered sitting in the notary's office in June 2016, watching her sign the papers. A psychologist was there, Dr. Helen Stewart, to certify Jennifer understood what she was doing. "You're sure about this?" Dr. Stewart had asked her. Jennifer hadn't even blinked. "I'm not ready to be a mother. I never was. Robert can give her a better life." She'd signed her name, Jennifer Marie Torres. She'd gone back to her maiden name and walked out, drove back to Sacramento, posted photos of dinner with Curtis that same night. And I'd sat there holding those papers thinking, someday you'll regret this. Someday you'll want something from Sophia, and these papers will stop you cold. I just hadn't known it would take 9 years. Now, standing in my quiet house after the police had left, I pulled out that old file, the one I'd kept current, and ready every document, every piece of evidence, every step I'd taken to protect my granddaughter. And at the very back, in a sealed envelope, the crown jewel, Jennifer's voluntary termination of parental rights, notarized and witnessed with her full confession about abandoning Sophia. She didn't know I had it. When I'd gotten full guardianship, the judge had sealed certain documents. Jennifer had probably forgotten she'd even signed them, too eager to get back to her new life. But I remembered. I remembered everything. In my 40 years as an accountant, I'd learned that the most powerful weapon in any dispute wasn't aggression. It was documentation. Paper trails evidence the boring, meticulous work of recording every transaction, every event, every truth. Jennifer had chosen emotion over evidence, drama over documentation. It was going to cost her everything. I looked at Sophia's closed bedroom door. My granddaughter, my responsibility, the child I'd raised from age 4 to 13. Through tears and laughter, through scraped knees and school projects, through every milestone Jennifer had missed. Jennifer thought she could come back now after 9 years of silence because she'd heard about the trust fund. Let her try. I'd spent 9 years preparing for this possibility. 9 years documenting every moment, every decision, every proof that Sophia was mine to protect. Jennifer wanted a court battle over custody and money, fine. But she was walking into a trap 9 years in the making, and she didn't even know it. I smiled in the darkness of my study, feeling that cold satisfaction settle in my bones. "Come on then, Jennifer," I whispered. "Let's play this out. Let's see what happens when greed meets preparation." The chess pieces were in position. The board was set, and I was 10 moves ahead. February 2016. Victoria Gay's law office smelled like leather and old paper, the kind of smell that made you think about contracts and consequences. She sat across from me, reading through the private investigator's report for the third time, her reading glasses perched on her nose. "This is damning," she said finally. "A mother who abandons her child and starts a new life 500 miles away. But Robert, you need to understand. Family court can be unpredictable. Judges sometimes believe in second chances." "I don't want chances," I told her. "I want certainty. I want Sophia protected legally permanently." Victoria leaned back in her chair. "Then we need to be methodical. Document everything, every missed call, every birthday Jennifer forgot, every moment she chose her new life over her daughter. Methodical." Now that was a word I understood. I'd spent 40 years as an accountant, turning chaos into order, transforming messy receipts and scattered transactions into clean, undeniable ledgers. This wasn't so different. Jennifer's abandonment was just another set of facts that needed proper documentation. I started with phone records. My carrier gave me detailed logs going back to December. 0 incoming calls from Jennifer's number. I tried calling her 17 times in January alone. All went to voicemail. 17 attempts to reach a mother about her daughter. 17 times she couldn't be bothered to answer. I documented each one. Date, time, duration. The accountant in me found it almost soothing building this evidence trail brick by brick. Next, I talked to neighbors. Mrs. Patterson from next door had watched Jennifer leave that December afternoon. She had 2 suitcases, Mrs. Patterson told me. Seemed like a lot for visiting a sick aunt for a day or two. I remember thinking that at the time. Did she seem upset, worried about her aunt? Mrs. Patterson shook her head. Honestly, she seemed relieved, like someone heading on vacation, not to a sick bed. I wrote it all down, got her to sign a witness statement. The private investigator's report was the centerpiece. Photos of Jennifer and Curtis at restaurants, their body language showing a couple deep in the honeymoon phase. Social media posts. Jennifer had been careless there. Starting fresh, she'd written on New Year's Day. Sometimes you have to leave the past behind to find your future. The past. She meant Sophia. My granddaughter was the past to be left behind. I sat in my study one night, spreading all the evidence across my desk like pieces of a puzzle. Phone records, witness statements, investigators' report, financial records, showing I'd been covering all of Sophia's expenses since December with no contribution from Jennifer. The picture was clear. This wasn't a mother temporarily separated from her child. This was abandonment, deliberate and complete. But Victoria had warned me courts favor reunification. Even if Jennifer abandoned Sophia, a judge might give her a chance to come back to try again. That's what kept me awake at night. The thought of Jennifer waltzing back in a year, 2 years, 5 years down the line, deciding she wanted to play mother again, disrupting Sophia's life whenever convenient for her. I needed something permanent, something that would stop Jennifer from ever using Sophia as a pawn. That's when the idea came to me. If Jennifer wanted to abandon Sophia, let her do it officially, completely, irrevocably. I called Victoria. What if Jennifer voluntarily terminated her parental rights? There was a long pause. That would be ideal for you, but Robert, most parents won't do that. It's permanent. They'd lose all legal claim to the child forever. What if we made it easy for her? What if we gave her an out that lets her keep living her new life without guilt or obligation? Victoria was quiet for a moment. You think she'd actually sign away her daughter? I thought about Jennifer's social media posts, her photos with Curtis, the way she'd blocked my number after I'd left one too many voicemails asking when she planned to see Sophia. She already has, I said. She just hasn't made it official yet. We drafted a letter, professional, non-acquisitory, laying out two clear options. Return to San Diego and resume parental responsibilities with support and resources provided, or voluntarily terminate parental rights and allow Sophia stability with a permanent guardian. We should add a detail, I told Victoria. Make it clear that if she terminates rights, she won't be responsible for any child support, past or future. No financial obligations. Victoria raised an eyebrow. You're making it very easy for her to walk away. I'm making it easy for her to do what she's already done. The difference is this time it'll be in writing. The letter went out in March. Jennifer's response came in April. Not a phone call, not a visit to see Sophia, but a call to Victoria's office, asking about the paperwork. She wanted option 2. Victoria scheduled the appointment for June. A notary, a psychologist to verify Jennifer, understood her decision, and Jennifer herself. I didn't attend. I couldn't trust myself to sit in the same room with her and stay civil. Instead, I stayed home with Sophia, reading her stories, pushing her on the swing set, doing all the small things that made up the actual work of parenting. Victoria called me that evening. She signed everything. Dr. Helen Stewart, the psychologist, certified that Jennifer was of sound mind, understood the consequences, and was acting voluntarily. What did she say? Did she ask about Sophia? She asked if this meant she wouldn't have to pay child support. When I confirmed that, she signed immediately. I closed my eyes. Even expecting it, even planning for it, hearing it confirmed, made something tighten in my chest. Did she leave a message for Sophia, anything? No, she was in and out in 30 minutes. She had dinner reservations in Sacramento. Of course she did. I hung up and went to check on Sophia. She was asleep, her nightlight casting soft shadows across her face. Stephen's face. My son's daughter, who deserved so much better than a mother who'd trade her for a dinner reservation. But at least now that mother couldn't come back, couldn't change her mind when it became convenient, couldn't disrupt Sophia's life on a whim. The papers Victoria gave me were clean, legal, absolute. Jennifer Marie Torres had voluntarily and permanently terminated all parental rights to Sophia Lynn Harrison. I locked them in my safe that night in a sealed envelope, and I thought, someday, Jennifer, you're going to want something. You're going to remember Sophia exists and decide you have a claim. And when that day comes, I'll have your signature, your confession, your own words, documenting that you chose to walk away. I didn't know it would take 9 years, but I absolutely knew that day would come, because people like Jennifer didn't change. They just waited until they needed something. The years between 2016 and 2024 passed in a rhythm of school mornings and piano lessons, parent-teacher conferences, and science fair projects. Sophia grew from a confused 4-year-old into a bright, confident teenager. She called me Grandpa until she was 7, then started calling me Dad. I never corrected her. Life was good, better than good. But I never forgot Jennifer's signature in that sealed envelope. I never forgot what Victoria had said. People sometimes come back when they think there's something to gain. So I prepared. First, the trust fund. Stephen had life insurance $500,000 that came to Sophia. I added another $150,000 for my retirement savings, put it all in a trust managed by Victoria's firm, Structured, so Sophia would receive it at 25 with strict provisions about who could access it before then. Only the guardian me had any control, and only for Sophia's direct benefit education medical care housing. This is very restrictive, Victoria noted. Most trusts have more flexibility. I don't want flexibility, I want walls. High walls that Jennifer can't climb if she ever decides to come back. Victoria nodded slowly. She understood what I was doing, building a fortress around everything that mattered. But the trust fund created a new problem, public record. Eventually, someone searching for information about Stephen Harrison's estate would find it, would see that his daughter had nearly $1 million waiting for her. I need an early warning system, I told Victoria in 2019. If anyone makes inquiries about Sophia's finances or Stephen's estate, I want to know immediately. She set it up through her firm. They flagged Sophia's name, Stephen's name, any searches or requests that came through official channels. If someone hires a lawyer to look into the estate, we'll get notification. Perfect. It seemed paranoid maybe, but accountants aren't paranoid. We're prepared. We anticipate problems before they happen. The years rolled on. Sophia made honor roll. Started piano. She had talent, real talent, the kind that made her teacher suggest advanced competitions. I drove her to lessons twice a week, sat through recital, helped her memorize pieces. She had friends over for sleepovers. I learned to make pancakes and shapes, to braid hair properly, to navigate the complex social dynamics of teenage girls. Sometimes I'd wake at night imagining Jennifer showing up at the door, demanding her daughter back. In these nightmares, judges were sympathetic. Every mother deserves a second chance, dream judges would say. But then I'd remember the envelope in my safe, Jennifer's signature. Her own words, "I'm not ready to be a mother. I voluntarily terminate all parental rights." No judge could overturn that. Jennifer had given away her second chance voluntarily in front of a psychologist and a notary. Still, I kept my documentation current. Every school report card got filed. Every medical record, photos of birthdays, holidays, everyday moments, building a paper trail that showed Sophia was thriving, safe, loved. "Why do you keep such detailed records?" Sophia asked once, finding me organizing files in my study. "Habit from work," I told her, which was true, but not the whole truth. The whole truth was I was preparing for war. December 2024 brought the call I'd been expecting for 8 years. Victoria's voice was tight. "Robert, we got a flag on the monitoring system. Someone made an inquiry about Stephen Harrison's estate last week." My hand tightened on the phone. Who the request came through a lawyer's office in Sacramento. Martin and Associates. They were asking about probate records, estate value beneficiaries, Sacramento Jennifer. Did they get the information public records only? They'd know Stephen had life insurance, that there was a trust established for his minor daughter, but not the amount or specific details without a court order. I sat down heavily. She found out about the money. Looks like it. "Robert, you should prepare yourself if she comes back." When she comes back, I corrected. It's not if anymore. I spent the next 2 weeks getting ready. Met with Victoria to review all documentation. Made sure the sealed envelope with Jennifer's termination papers was properly stored. Had the notary verify the seals were intact. I wanted no question about authenticity. I updated my file on Jennifer. The private investigator I'd kept on retainer did a current check. She and Curtis were still in Sacramento. He'd gone through 2 jobs in 8 years. She was working retail. They'd moved apartments 3 times, always downsizing. Money problems, probably. Curtis had a gambling history that hadn't improved. They were living paycheck to paycheck while nearly $1 million sat in a trust fund for a daughter Jennifer had abandoned. The bitter irony wasn't lost on me. I rehearsed conversations with Sophia. "Remember, if your mother ever contacts you, I need to know immediately." "Why would she contact me?" Sophia asked. She was 13 now, old enough to handle some truth. "Because people sometimes want things they gave up. I need you to understand. If she comes back, it won't be because she suddenly cares. It'll be because she wants something." Sophia nodded. She was smart. She'd figured out years ago that her mother had chosen to leave. On New Year's Day 2025, I sat in my study and wrote out a timeline. What would happen if Jennifer came back? What would she claim? How would she try to manipulate the situation? She couldn't claim ignorance. She'd signed papers. She couldn't claim I'd stolen Sophia. Courts had granted me legal guardianship. She couldn't claim she'd been searching. 8 years of silence proved otherwise. But she could claim I'd manipulated her into signing away her rights. She could claim she'd been in grief-induced depression. She could claim she wanted to reunite with her daughter. And if she got a sympathetic judge, one who believed in redemption and second chances. No, I couldn't let it get that far. I pulled out the envelope, Jennifer's termination of parental rights. In it, she'd written in her own hand that she'd abandoned Sophia deliberately without intention to return. This wasn't just a legal document. It was a confession, and I'd kept it secret for 9 years, waiting for the exact moment it would do the most damage to any claim Jennifer might make. The trick was timing. Reveal it too early and she'd withdraw her claim. Reveal it too late and she might gain some sympathy first. No, I needed to let her make her case. Let her lie under oath about how much she'd searched, how much she cared, how circumstances had prevented her return. And then when she'd committed fully to her story, I'd produce her signature, her confession. Her own words, destroying every lie she'd told. I smiled in the darkness of my study. 9 years. Jennifer had 9 years to be a mother, to reach out, to show even minimal interest in her daughter. She'd chosen silence. And now when money suddenly made Sophia interesting again, Jennifer thought she could just waltz back in. She had no idea what she was walking into. I'd spent 9 years building an impregnable case, documentation, evidence, legal walls that couldn't be breached. Jennifer was coming with lies and lawyers. I was waiting with truth and time. And in this game, truth and time were undefeatable. 3 days after Jennifer showed up at my door with her police escort, Detective Rivers called me into the station for a formal interview. I arrived with my briefcase, the same battered leather one I'd carried to work for 30 years, filled with 9 years of documentation. Jennifer was already there when I walked in, sitting in a plastic chair with Curtis beside her. He was everything I'd expected from the private investigator's photos. Mid-40s, cheap suit, trying to look expensive, the kind of smile that made you check your wallet was still in your pocket. Jennifer's performance had evolved since the doorstep drama. Today she was playing determined mother designer sunglasses, pushed up on her head tablet in hand, probably with notes from whatever lawyer she'd scraped together money for. Mr. Harrison, Detective Rivers gestured me into an interview room. Jennifer and Curtis followed. "Mrs. Medina has made serious allegations. Child abduction, financial manipulation. I need to hear your side." I set my briefcase on the table and clicked it open, happy to clarify. "Where would you like to start?" Jennifer couldn't contain herself. "He stole my daughter. I went to visit my sick aunt for a few days, and when I came back, they were gone." A few days, I pulled out the first document. These are phone records from December 2015 through January 2016. 17 calls I made to your number, Jennifer. All went to voicemail. You never returned one. I slid the paper across to Detective Rivers. He studied it, his expression neutral. "I was traumatized," Jennifer said quickly. "My husband had just died. I wasn't thinking clearly. Stephen died in 2013, I said. Sophia was 2. You seem to handle single parenthood well enough for 2 years. What changed in December 2015? Curtis leaned forward. Maybe she met someone who helped her heal? Is that a crime? I looked at him for the first time. No. Falling in love isn't a crime. Abandoning your daughter for 9 years is a different matter. I didn't abandon her. Jennifer's voice rose. You manipulated the situation. You turned her against me. Detective. I pulled out another document. This is the court order granting me legal guardianship of Sophia dated June 2016, approved by Judge Morrison in San Diego County Family Court. All proper channels, all legal. Rivers took the document, reading carefully. I watched Jennifer's face. She was realizing I hadn't just been sitting around for 9 years. I'd been building a fortress. This is fake, she said, but her voice wavered. It's notarized and sealed by the court, Rivers said. Mr. Harrison, how did you obtain guardianship? My daughter-in-law disappeared with no contact. After 2 months, I filed for emergency custody to ensure Sophia had legal protection. The court granted it because you manipulated them. Jennifer stood up. You told them lies about me. I told them facts. That you'd left your daughter with me claiming it was for 1 day and never returned. That your phone was disconnected. That I'd hired a private investigator who found you 500 miles away, living with Mr. Medina here, starting a new life. Curtis's jaw tightened. Jennifer grabbed his arm. You had no right, she hissed. She's my daughter. Then where were you? The question came out harder than I'd intended. Where were you for her 5th birthday? Her first day of kindergarten when she learned to read? When she cried herself to sleep asking why Mommy didn't want her anymore? The room went very quiet. I think I said, pulling out another document, that what's really happening here became clear when I got this notification from my attorney last month. Someone using a Sacramento law firm made inquiries about Stephen Harrison's estate, about probate records, about assets left to his daughter. Jennifer's face lost color. Just a shade, but I saw it. Curtis's hand twitched on the table. Tell me, Jennifer? I kept my voice conversational, almost friendly. When exactly did you learn about the trust fund? I don't know what you're talking about. The trust established from Stephen's life insurance and my investments. $850,000 held for Sophia until she's 25. Curtis's eyes widened just slightly. Jennifer grabbed his hand. That's my daughter's money, she said. Yes, it is Sophia's money, not yours. And she gets it when she's 25, managed by her legal guardian until then. I paused. Which is me. Detective Rivers was watching Jennifer now with a different expression, less sympathy, more calculation. He'd seen this before, people who showed up when there was money involved. This is quite a coincidence, Rivers said slowly. 9 years of no contact, and you returned 2 weeks after inquiries were made about your daughter's trust fund. I didn't. Jennifer was floundering. I've been searching for her all this time. Really, I opened a folder. Detective, these are Sophia's school records. Same school for 9 years. Same address on file. My address in San Diego, the same city where Jennifer lived when she left. She knew exactly where to find us. She just didn't want to until now. You poisoned her against me. Jennifer's voice was shrill now. That's why she doesn't recognize me. She doesn't recognize you because she was 4 years old when you left, and you're a stranger to her now. Children don't remember people who disappear from their lives for 9 years. I want my daughter back. Jennifer was crying now, but they weren't the pretty tears from my doorstep. These were angry, desperate. I have rights. Actually, I said, quietly. You don't? Rivers looked at me. Explain. I have additional documentation beyond the guardianship order, but I'd prefer to present it in court before a judge where it can be properly examined. I smiled at Jennifer. It wasn't a kind smile. I think we all deserve our day in court. Don't you agree, Jennifer? She stared at me, and I saw the first flicker of real fear in her eyes. She was beginning to understand she'd walked into something she couldn't control. Curtis stood up. Come on, Jennifer. We don't have to listen to this. Actually, River said, I need to complete this interview, but Mr. Harrison, you're right. This needs to go before a judge. I'll file my report and recommend a family court hearing. As Jennifer and Curtis left, she turned back to me. You'll pay for this. I don't know what you think you have, but I'm her mother. Are you? I asked. When did you last act like one? The door closed behind them. Rivers looked at me. You want to tell me what documentation you're holding back? In court, I said. But Detective, I've spent 9 years preparing for this day. I knew she'd come back eventually. People like Jennifer always do when there's something to gain. He nodded slowly. For what it's worth, that little girl at your house looked happy, healthy, loved. That woman looks like someone who just found out her lottery ticket might be fake. Interesting comparison, I said, standing and closing my briefcase. Very interesting indeed. February brought cold rain to San Diego and Jennifer to family court. She'd upgraded lawyers, probably maxed out a credit card for this one. He was younger, aggressive, with that hungry look of someone desperate for a win. I sat with Victoria Gray at the defendant's table. Sophia sat beside me, gripping my hand so tight I could feel her pulse. You okay, sweetheart? I whispered. Is she going to take me away? Not a chance. Jennifer's lawyer, his name was Richard Burke. I'd looked him up, stood to make his opening statement. He paced like he thought he was in a TV courtroom drama. Your Honor, this is a tragic case of parental alienation and legal manipulation. My client Jennifer Medina temporarily left her daughter with her grandfather while dealing with grief and trauma from losing her husband. When she returned, she found her father-in-law had manipulated the system to steal legal custody. Judge Harold Mitchell, 60-some with tired eyes that had seen every family tragedy imaginable, listened without expression. Burke continued, warming to his theme. Mrs. Medina was not in a mental state to fight a custody battle in 2016. She was grieving alone, struggling to survive, and Mr. Harrison took advantage of that vulnerability to permanently separate a mother from her child. It was a good story. If I hadn't lived through the reality, I might have believed it myself. She has spent years trying to find her daughter, trying to rebuild her life so she could provide a proper home. And now, after all this time, she's finally in a position to be the mother Sophia deserves. Burke sat down satisfied. Jennifer dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Curtis, sitting behind her, tried to look supportive. Judge Mitchell turned to Victoria. Miss Gray. Victoria stood. She didn't pace. She just looked at the judge with the calm certainty of someone holding 4 aces. Your Honor, Mr. Harrison obtained legal guardianship through proper channels in 2016. He has raised his granddaughter for 9 years. She's an honor student, takes piano lessons, is in therapy to deal with abandonment trauma from her mother's disappearance. She's thriving. She was stolen, Jennifer burst out. Burke grabbed her arm, but she shook him off. He poisoned her against me. He took my child and turned her into someone who doesn't even know her own mother. Judge Mitchell raised a hand. Mrs. Medina, you'll have a chance to testify right now. I want to hear counsel. Victoria continued as if there had been no interruption. The guardianship was granted because Mrs. Medina, then Mrs. Harrison, abandoned her 4-year-old daughter without contact for months. She has not attempted contact in 9 years. No phone calls, no letters, no birthday cards, nothing. Because he hid them from me. Mrs. Medina, Judge Mitchell's voice went cold. One more outburst and you'll wait outside. Do you understand? She subsided, but her face was flushed with anger. Burke was whispering urgently in her ear. The testimony began. Burke called Jennifer first. She told her story well. I had to admit the grief, the trauma, the temporary separation that became permanent when I manipulated the court. She cried at the right moments, talked about how much she'd missed her daughter. "And when did you discover where Sophia was?" Burke asked. "Careful," I thought. "This is where it gets tricky. Recently, Jennifer said I'd been searching, but Mr. Harrison had hidden them." "Well, hidden them in the same house where you left your daughter?" I murmured to Victoria. "At the same address you had for years?" Victoria's lips twitched. Burke moved to his closing theme. "Your Honor, every child deserves their mother. And Medina has made mistakes, but she's ready now to be the parent Sophia needs. We ask that custody be returned to her with Mr. Harrison receiving visitation rights." Sophia's hand tightened on mine. I squeezed back. Judge Mitchell looked at the documents Burke had submitted. Then he looked at Victoria. "Mrs. Gray, your client wishes to respond." "He does, Your Honor." I stood up, reached into my briefcase, pulled out the brown envelope I'd kept sealed for 9 years. "Your Honor, I'd like to submit additional evidence." Burke was on his feet. "Objection. We weren't notified of additional documents." "They're part of the original guardianship file," Victoria said smoothly, "sealed by court order in 2016. Mr. Harrison is requesting they be unsealed and entered into evidence." Judge Mitchell frowned. "Approach." We walked to the bench. Victoria, Burke, and me. The judge took the envelope, examining the seal. His eyebrows rose. "This was sealed by Judge Morrison." "Yes, Your Honor. I requested certain sensitive documents be sealed to protect all parties, but given Mrs. Medina's claims, I believe they're relevant now." Judge Mitchell broke the seal and began reading. I watched his face. The first page brought a slight frown. The second page, his expression hardened. By the third page, he looked at Jennifer with something approaching contempt. "Mrs. Medina," he said, his voice cutting across the courtroom. "Do you know what's in this document?" Jennifer looked confused. "No, Your Honor." The judge looked at me. "She doesn't know." "Not yet, Your Honor." Judge Mitchell sat back. He was angry now. I could see it in the set of his jaw. "This is going to be read into the record. Mr. Burke, you're going to want to hear this." Burke looked confused. Jennifer looked scared. Curtis leaned forward, trying to understand what was happening. I returned to my seat. Sophia looked up at me. "Grandpa, it's okay," I said quietly. "Everything's going to be okay." Judge Mitchell's voice was cold as he began to read. "Voluntary termination of parental rights. Jennifer Marie Torres, dated June 15th, 2016. The courtroom went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Jennifer's face went white. Not pale white, like every drop of blood had drained away. Her mouth opened, forming a small O of shock. Burke spun to look at her. "What is this?" Curtis stood up in the gallery. "That's not possible. She never sit down, Sir," Judge Mitchell ordered. Then he continued reading. "I, Jennifer Marie Taus, do voluntarily and permanently terminate all parental rights to my daughter Sophia Lynn Harrison. This document is signed in the presence of a notary public and Dr. Helen Stewart, licensed psychologist, who certifies I am of sound mind and understand the permanent nature of this action." Jennifer made a sound, half gasp, half sob. Burke was frantically whispering to her, but she wasn't responding. She just stared at the judge like she was watching her own execution. Judge Mitchell turned the page, and here we have a personal statement from Mrs. Torres. He looked at Jennifer over his reading glasses. "Would you like me to read this aloud?" "No," Jennifer whispered. "Please, no. I think we need to hear it." His voice was implacable. I, Jennifer Torres, acknowledged that I voluntarily left my daughter Sophia with her grandfather Robert Harrison on December 10th, 2015, with the stated intention of visiting a sick relative for one day. This was false. I left because I was not prepared to be a mother and wanted to start a new life with Curtis Medina in Sacramento. I did not intend to return for my daughter. I voluntarily terminate all parental rights because I am not capable of being the mother Sophia needs. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. Jennifer's face had gone from white to red. Tears were streaming down her cheeks. But these weren't calculated tears. These were shame and rage and humiliation, all mixed together. Curtis had his head in his hands. Burke looked like a man who just realized his parachute hadn't opened, and I sat there watching 9 years of preparation pay off in the most beautiful way possible. Judge Mitchell wasn't done. He held up the document so the courtroom could see Jennifer's signature bold and undeniable at the bottom of the page. "Mrs. Medina," he said, his voice like ice. "This is your signature, is it not?" Jennifer couldn't speak. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. She looked like someone who just watched their entire world collapse in slow motion. Burke tried to recover. "Your Honor, we need time to examine this document to verify its authenticity. My client was clearly not in her right mind when your client signed this in the presence of a licensed psychologist who certified her mental competency." Judge Mitchell flipped to another page. "Dr. Helen Stewart, is Dr. Stewart available?" Victoria stood. "She's in the hallway, Your Honor." We anticipated she might be needed. Of course we did. 9 years of preparation meant anticipating everything. The bailiff brought Dr. Stewart in. She was in her 60s now, gray hair pulled back, in a professional bun, carrying a leather folder that probably contained her own records of that day. "Dr. Stewart," Judge Mitchell said, "do you recognize this document?" She took it, studied it, nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. I was present when Mrs. Medina signed this voluntary termination in June 2016. And can you describe her mental state at the time?" She was completely lucid calm. Actually, she understood exactly what she was signing and what it meant. I asked her multiple times if she was certain if she understood this was permanent. She said yes each time. Jennifer made a sound, half sob, half protest. Curtis had his arm around her shoulders, but he looked like he wanted to bolt from the courtroom. "Did she appear coerced in any way?" Judge Mitchell asked. "Not at all. Mr. Harrison wasn't even present for the signing. It was just Mrs. Torres, myself, the notary, and her attorney at the time, Miss Gray, who had explained everything thoroughly." Burke was frantically scribbling notes. "Your Honor, depression can manifest as calm acceptance. My client had lost her husband 2 years earlier," I said quietly. Everyone turned to look at me. "Stephen died in 2013. This document was signed in 2016. And if I may, Your Honor," Judge Mitchell nodded. I stood up. Time to twist the knife just a little deeper. Jennifer didn't just sign the termination papers. She also provided a detailed timeline of her actions. Would the court like to hear it? Jennifer's face went from white to gray. Burke was shaking his head frantically at her, but it was too late. The judge was already looking at the next page. December 10th, 2015, Judge Mitchell read, "I left Sophia with Robert, claiming I needed to visit a sick-aunt in Sacramento. This was false. I had already met Curtis Medina and planned to start a new life with him. December 11th, I moved into Curtis's apartment in Sacramento. December 15th, I blocked Robert's number because his calls were inconvenient. December 25th, Christmas Day, I did not contact my daughter. The courtroom was silent except for Jennifer's quiet crying. January through May 2016, the judge continued, I made no attempt to contact my daughter or inquire about her welfare. When Mr. Harrison's attorney contacted me with the termination papers, I was relieved to have a legal way to end my parental obligations." Burke stood up. "Your Honor, this is clearly a document obtained under duress. Sit down, Mr. Burke." Judge Mitchell's voice cracked like a whip. "I've heard enough. Mrs. Medina, do you deny that this is your signature? Jennifer looked up, her face blotchy with tears. I was confused. I didn't know what I was doing. Dr. Stewart has testified you were completely competent. The notary certified your identity. You signed in the presence of your own attorney. He looked at her with something approaching disgust. You abandoned your 4-year-old daughter and legally surrendered all rights to her. And now 9 years later, after you discovered she has a trust fund worth $850,000, you suddenly want to be a mother again. That's not I didn't. Jennifer was falling apart. I love my daughter, you don't even know her. Sophia's voice was small but clear. She was standing now, still holding my hand. You don't know my favorite color, you don't know what grade I'm in. You don't know anything about me. Jennifer turned to look at her daughter. Baby, I don't call me that. I'm not your baby. I haven't been your baby since I was 4 years old. The courtroom was absolutely still. Even Burke had no response to that. Judge Mitchell set the papers down. Mrs. Medina, you voluntarily and permanently terminated your parental rights in 2016. That termination was legal, properly witnessed, and final. You have no legal standing to challenge Mr. Harrison's guardianship. You have no right to custody of Sophia. You have no claim to her trust fund. Do you understand? Curtis stood up suddenly. This is ridiculous. That old manipulated everything. He threatened us. Jennifer was scared. Scared I couldn't help it. The word came out with more edge than I'd intended. Scared people don't post vacation photos on social media. Scared people don't go to parties and restaurants and Mexico resorts without their children. Curtis's face flushed red. You don't know what you're talking about, don't I? I looked at Victoria. She pulled out her folder, the one I'd been saving for exactly this moment. Your Honor? Victoria said, we have extensive documentation of Mrs. Medina's activities from December 2015 through 2016. Private investigator reports, social media posts, photographs. I think they paint a very clear picture of someone who wasn't scared or confused. She was happy to start a new life without her daughter. Burke tried one more time. Those posts could be explained. People often present a false front on social media when they're struggling. Then explain this one. I took a photograph from Victoria's folder and held it up. It was a screenshot dated July 4, 2016, 3 weeks after Jennifer signed away her rights. This is from Jennifer's Facebook page. She's on a boat with Curtis. The caption reads, "Finally free to live my best life, no regrets, no looking back." The words hung in the air like an indictment. Jennifer buried her face in her hands. Curtis looked like he wanted to hit someone. Probably me. Judge Mitchell studied the photograph. When he looked up, his expression was granite. I've seen enough. This court will reconvene tomorrow at 9:00 a.m. for final arguments and ruling. Mrs. Medina, Mr. Medina. I suggest you use that time to consider whether you really want to continue this farce. He banged his gavel. Court adjourned. As people started filing out, I stayed seated watching Jennifer and Curtis huddle with Burke. Jennifer was crying. Curtis was gesturing angrily, and Burke looked like a man trying to explain to passengers that the ship was definitely sinking. Victoria leaned over. That went well. Better than expected, I admitted, though. I'm curious what desperate move they'll try next. You think they'll try something? I watched Curtis's face, red with fury and humiliation. People like him don't go down quietly. He'll push Jennifer to try one more lie, one more manipulation. He's too invested in that trust fund to walk away. You prepared for that? I smiled. Victoria, I've been preparing for 9 years. Whatever they try tomorrow, I promise you I'm ready. Sophia tugged on my sleeve. Can we go home now, Grandpa? Yes, sweetheart. Let's go home. As we walked past Jennifer and Curtis, I heard him hiss at her. That document has to be fake. Tell them it's fake. Tell them he forced you. I kept walking. Let them plan. Let them scheme. Tomorrow I'd finished what I'd started 9 years ago. The next morning I arrived at the courthouse to find Burke looking like he'd been up all night. Jennifer's eyes were red-rimmed, and Curtis had the jittery energy of someone running on coffee in desperation. They'd cooked up something. I could tell by the way they kept whispering to each other by the stack of papers. Burke was clutching like a lifeline. When court reconvened, Burke stood with renewed confidence. Whatever Hail Mary they'd planned, he believed in it. Your Honor, after yesterday's revelations, my client spent the night confronting some very painful memories. Memories she'd repressed due to trauma. Here we go. I thought, let's see what fiction they've created. Mrs. Medina now remembers that Mr. Harrison threatened her in 2016. He told her if she didn't sign the termination papers, he would make sure she never saw her daughter again. He would destroy her reputation, her relationship with Curtis, everything. Judge Mitchell looked skeptical. She remembers this now after 9 years. Trauma can cause memory suppression, Your Honor, but yesterday's stress brought it all back. Burke pulled out his papers. We also have evidence that Mr. Harrison has been financially controlling. The trust fund he established, he's the sole administrator. Sophia can't access any of it without his permission. That's not protection. That's control. I glanced at Victoria. She looked unimpressed. And furthermore, Burke was warming up now. We have testimony from Curtis Medina about Mr. Harrison's behavior. Curtis, please stand. Curtis stood, trying to look respectable. He'd upgraded from yesterday's cheap suit to something slightly less cheap. Tell the court what happened when you tried to contact Mr. Harrison about Jennifer seeing Sophia. Curtis cleared his throat. I called him in 2023. Jennifer had been in therapy working through her issues and wanted to reconnect with her daughter. Harrison told me, and I quote, Jennifer made her choice. She signed papers, tell her to stay away, or there would be consequences. It was a good lie, specific enough to sound real vague enough to be hard to disprove. Is this true, Mr. Harrison? Judge Mitchell asked. I stood up. No, Your Honor. I received no call from Mr. Medina in 2023 or any other year. I'd be happy to provide my phone records going back 9 years if the court requests them. Burke jumped in. Phone records can be manipulated by a retired accountant with no technical expertise. I smiled. Your Honor, I kept records because that's what I do. Every document, every communication, every expense related to Sophia's care. If Mr. Medina called, there'd be a record. There isn't one because the call never happened. Curtis's face flushed. Maybe it was 2022 or 2021. I don't remember exactly, but you remembered the exact quote. Victoria stood now. Mr. Medina, isn't it true you've never contacted Mr. Harrison about anything until you and Mrs. Medina showed up with police last month? Curtis was floundering. Burke tried to redirect. The point is, Your Honor, that Mr. Harrison has systematically isolated Sophia from her mother by following a court order that her mother voluntarily signed. I kept my voice calm, reasonable. Your Honor, if I may address the trust fund concern, Judge Mitchell nodded. The trust is structured to protect Sophia's inheritance until she's mature enough to manage it responsibly. Age 25. This is completely standard for trusts of this size. I'm the administrator because I'm her legal guardian. But the trust has strict provisions. I can only use funds for Sophia's direct benefit. Education, medical care, housing, every expenditure is documented and reviewable by the court. He could be stealing from it, Jennifer burst out. How do we know he's not annual audits? Victoria said, pulling out yet another folder. Conducted by an independent accounting firm, every penny accounted for. Would you like to review them, Your Honor? Burke was looking desperate now. What about the claim that Harrison threatened my client into signing the termination? Dr. Stewart testified yesterday that I wasn't even present when Jennifer signed, I said. How exactly did I threaten her? Through his lawyer, Jennifer stood up. Victoria Gray told me if I didn't sign, you'd make sure I lost everything. You'd tell Curtis about she stopped abruptly, about what Judge Mitchell leaned forward. Tell Curtis about what Mrs. Medina. Jennifer looked trapped. She'd almost said something she shouldn't have. Nothing. I just meant he threatened to ruin my new relationship. By doing what I asked, by telling Curtis the truth. That you'd abandoned your 4-year-old daughter? Was that the threat, Jennifer? That your new boyfriend might learn who you really are? The courtroom went quiet. Victoria pulled out another document. Your Honor, we have the letter Mr. Harrison sent to Mrs. Medina through our office in 2016. Would you like to read it? She handed it to the judge. He read it silently, then looked at Jennifer with barely concealed contempt. This letter offers 2 options. Return to San Diego and resume parental responsibilities with support provided, or voluntarily terminate rights. There's no threat, no coercion, just 2 clear choices. You chose option 2, Mrs. Medina. Burke tried again. Your Honor, my client was not in a mental state to make that choice. Stop. Judge Mitchell held up his hand. I've heard enough of this. Mr. Burke, your client signed legal documents witnessed by a psychologist, a notary, and an attorney. She then disappeared for 9 years without a single attempt to contact her daughter. Now she claims she was threatened, but her only evidence is recovered memories that conveniently appeared yesterday. This is insulting to the court's intelligence. Your Honor, I said enough. The judge's voice was final. Mrs. Medina, did you or did you not voluntarily sign the termination of parental rights? Jennifer looked at Curtis at Burke at the floor. Finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, I signed it. And did Mr. Harrison threaten you or force you to sign? I know. But he gave me no choice. He gave you 2 choices. You chose the one that let you walk away without responsibility or guilt. Judge Mitchell leaned back. Tomorrow, I'll deliver my final ruling, but I'll tell you now, nothing I've heard today has changed my view of this case. You abandoned your daughter, you signed away your rights, and you only came back when you learned there was money involved. That's not motherhood. That's opportunism. Burke slumped in his chair. Curtis was whispering furiously to Jennifer, and Jennifer was crying again. But these weren't tears of sadness. These were tears of rage and frustration and the bitter recognition that her scheme had failed. I sat back, Sophia's hands still in mine, and felt something close to satisfaction. They'd tried their counterattack. They'd lied, manipulated, invented threats, and recovered memories. And every single lie had shattered against the wall of documentation I'd spent 9 years building. Tomorrow would bring the final verdict. But really, the battle was already over. Jennifer had lost the moment she signed those papers in 2016. She just hadn't known it until now. After the morning's failed counterattack, Judge Mitchell called a brief recess. When we returned, he looked at Sophia with a gentler expression than he'd shown anyone else in this courtroom. Sophia, he said, I'd like to speak with you privately in my chambers. Would that be all right? Sophia looked at me. I squeezed her hand. It's okay. Just tell him the truth. She nodded and followed the judge and the bailiff out of the courtroom. Jennifer half stood like she might follow, but Judge Mitchell's look stopped her cold. The 20 minutes they were gone felt like hours. Curtis kept whispering to Jennifer. Burke was reviewing his notes, probably trying to figure out if there was any move left to make. Victoria sat calmly beside me, but I could see the slight tension in her shoulders. I knew what Sophia would say. We'd never rehearsed it, never coached her, but I knew my granddaughter. She was honest, clear-headed, and after 9 years with me, she understood exactly what Jennifer's sudden appearance meant. When the door opened and Sophia came back, her eyes were a little red, but her expression was determined. Judge Mitchell's face had hardened into something approaching granite. Thank you, Sophia, he said gently. You can sit with your grandfather now. She came back to me, and I put my arm around her shoulders. She leaned into me slightly, and I felt her trembling just a bit. Mrs. Medina, Mr. Medina. Judge Mitchell began, and his tone could have frozen water. I've just had a very illuminating conversation with your daughter. Jennifer's face went pale. Curtis stopped fidgeting with his wedding ring. Sophia has made it very clear where she wishes to live. She referred to Mr. Harrison as the only person who never left me. She described 9 years of stability, love, and support. She told me about her school, her piano lessons, her therapy sessions, to deal with abandonment trauma from her mother's disappearance. Jennifer made a small sound. Curtis reached for her hand, but she pulled away. She also, Judge Mitchell continued, his voice dropping to something dangerous, told me about an encounter that occurred last week. Apparently, Mrs. Medina, you accidentally ran into Sophia outside her school. Jennifer's eyes widened. I saw the moment she realized where this was going. During this encounter, Mr. Medina asked Sophia, and I quote, "How much money did your father leave you?" The courtroom went absolutely silent. Curtis's face drained of color, his mouth opened, forming words that wouldn't come. Jennifer grabbed his arm, but he shook her off, standing up. That's not... She's lying. I never sit down, Mr. Medina. Judge Mitchell's voice cracked like a whip. Sophia has no reason to lie. You, on the other hand, have 850,000 reasons? Curtis sat down heavily. His hands were shaking. Jennifer was crying again, but these tears were different. These were the tears of someone watching their scheme implode in real time. Your Honor, Burke tried weakly. Children can misunderstand. Sophia is 13 years old and extremely articulate. She described the conversation in detail, including your client's exact words. She also mentioned that Mrs. Medina told her, "You'll understand when you're older." And that family is important, which Sophia interpreted correctly, I believe, as meaning the money is important. I sat there watching them fall apart and felt something close to vindication. 9 years. 9 years of preparing for this exact moment, and it was even more satisfying than I'd imagined. Victoria leaned over. You knew about the school encounter Sophia told me that night. I documented it immediately. Of course I did. Documentation was what I did. Judge Mitchell wasn't finished. I'm also calling Child Protective Services to provide their assessment. Miss Anderson. A woman in her 40s stood from the back of the courtroom. She looked professional, competent, and she was holding a thick file. Miss Patricia Anderson, social worker, she introduced herself. Your Honor, I've been monitoring Sophia Harrison's case since Mr. Harrison was granted guardianship in 2016. I conduct annual home visits and reviews. In your assessment, Sophia is thriving. She's an A student, participates in extracurricular activities, has healthy friendships. She's been in therapy since 2016 to process abandonment issues, and her therapist reports excellent progress. The home environment is stable, loving, and appropriate, and your recommendation regarding custody. Any change in custody at this point would be severely detrimental to Sophia's psychological well-being. She's been with Mr. Harrison for 9 years, the majority of her life. He's the only stable parental figure she's known. Removing her would re-traumatize her and undo years of therapeutic progress. Jennifer looked like she'd been slapped. Burke had his head in his hands. Curtis was staring at the floor, his jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscles jumping. Furthermore, Miss Anderson continued, Sophia has explicitly stated she does not wish to have contact with her biological mother. She views her as a stranger who abandoned her and only returned for financial gain. Out of the mouths of babes, I murmured. Sophia heard me and almost smiled. Judge Mitchell set down his papers. I've heard enough. This court will reconvene tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. for final judgment. But I'll tell you now, Mr. B, if you have your client's best interests at heart, you'll advise her to accept the inevitable. This case is over. He stood and we all stood. As the judge left, Jennifer turned to look at me. Her face was a mask of rage and humiliation and desperate, impotent fury. "You poisoned her against me," she hissed. "You turned my daughter into someone who doesn't even know her own mother." I looked at her calmly. "No, Jennifer, you did that yourself. You left a 4-year-old child and never looked back. I just made sure she knew the truth when you finally did." Curtis grabbed Jennifer's arm, pulling her toward the door. As they passed, I heard him say, "This is your fault. You said it would be easy money. You said he was just an old man." The door closed behind them. Victoria packed up her briefcase. "Well, that went well. Better than expected." I agreed. Sophia looked up at me. "Grandpa, was I okay? Did I do all right?" I hugged her. "You were perfect, sweetheart. Absolutely perfect." And she was. She told the truth simply and clearly. And that truth had been the final nail in Jennifer's coffin. Tomorrow would bring the official verdict. But really, the battle had been won the moment Jennifer signed those papers 9 years ago. She just hadn't known it until now. The next morning, March 3rd, 2025, the courtroom was packed. Word had gotten out about the case. The abandoned daughter, the returned mother, the trust fund. Even the court reporter looked more alert than usual. Jennifer and Curtis arrived separately from Burke. They weren't speaking to each other. Curtis's face was haggarded, like he'd been up all night. Jennifer looked hollowed out, her makeup unable to hide the dark circles under her eyes. Judge Mitchell entered and we all stood. When he sat, there was no preamble. "I've reviewed all evidence, testimony, and documentation in this case. I'm ready to deliver my judgment." The courtroom held its collective breath. Jennifer Medina, formerly Jennifer Harrison, voluntarily and legally terminated her parental rights to Sophia Lynn Harrison in June 2016. This termination was witnessed, notarized, and certified by a licensed psychologist. It was done with full knowledge and consent. California law is clear. Such terminations are permanent and irrevocable, absent extreme circumstances such as fraud or coercion. No such circumstances exist here. Jennifer's hands were clenched so tight her knuckles were white. Mrs. Medina's claim that she was threatened or coerced is contradicted by every piece of evidence. Dr. Stewart's testimony confirms she was competent and willing. The written statement she provided details her deliberate abandonment of her daughter. Her own social media posts from 2016 celebrate her freedom and new life. Burke started to stand, but Judge Mitchell waved him down. Furthermore, Mrs. Medina made no attempt to contact her daughter for 9 years. No calls, no letters, no birthday cards, no child support. She only returned when she learned of a substantial trust fund. This timing is not coincidental, it is damning. Curtis was staring at the floor. Jennifer was crying silently, but there was anger in those tears, not remorse. Robert Harrison has raised Sophia for 9 years. He obtained legal guardianship through proper channels. He has provided it a stable, loving home. Sophia is thriving academically, socially, and emotionally. She has explicitly stated her wish to remain with her grandfather, whom she considers her true parent. Judge Mitchell looked directly at Jennifer. "Mrs. Medina, you made your choice in 2016. You chose freedom over responsibility. You chose a new relationship over your daughter. You signed documents making that choice legal and permanent. You do not get to reverse that decision 9 years later because it has become financially convenient." Jennifer's face was crimson now, not with embarrassment, but with rage. She looked like she wanted to scream, to throw something, to lash out. Curtis had his head in his hands. Therefore, this court's ruling is as follows. Robert Harrison's guardianship of Sophia Lynn Harrison is confirmed and will remain in effect until Sophia reaches the age of 18. Jennifer Medina's parental rights remain permanently terminated. She is prohibited from any contact with Sophia without Sophia's written consent after Sophia turns 18. He paused, and I could see something almost like satisfaction cross his face. Additionally, given the frivolous and bad faith nature of this custody claim, I am ordering Jennifer Medina and Curtis Medina jointly and severally to pay Mr. Harrison's legal fees in the amount of $15,000. Payment is due within 90 days. Curtis's head snapped up. $15,000. We don't have. Then I suggest you find it, Mr. Medina. You filed false kidnapping charges, wasted the court's time and police resources, and attempted to manipulate the legal system for financial gain. There are consequences for such actions. Jennifer stood up suddenly, her chair scraping back. This isn't fair. She's my daughter. I have rights. You had rights? Judge Mitchell said coldly. You signed them away. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down with a sound like a gunshot. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Jennifer let out a sound somewhere between a sob and a scream. Curtis grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the exit, but she jerked away from him. This is your fault, she snarled at him. You said we'd get the money. You said it would be easy. Me, you're the one who abandoned your kid. They were still fighting as they left the courtroom. Burke followed them, looking like a man who knew his invoice would never be paid. Detective Rivers, who'd been sitting in the back, approached me. He looked apologetic. Mr. Harrison, I want to apologize for showing up at your door with those accusations. You were doing your job, detective. I shook his hand. But now you know the truth. He nodded. For what it's worth, that little girl is lucky to have you. I'm the lucky one, I said, and I meant it. Victoria was smiling as she packed up. 9 years of preparation worth it, every single day. We walked out of the courthouse into bright California sunshine. Sophia held my hand, squinting in the light. Is it really over? She asked. It's really over. She can't come back. She can't come back. Sophia was quiet for a moment. Then she looked up at me. Grandpa, thank you. Thank you for never leaving me. I squeezed her hand. I never will, sweetheart. Never. As we walked to the car, I saw Jennifer and Curtis in the parking lot still arguing. She was crying. He was gesturing angrily. Their scheme had failed. Their relationship was disintegrating. And they owed me $15,000 they didn't have. I felt no sympathy, just satisfaction. 10 years ago, Jennifer had made a choice. She'd chosen to abandon her daughter to sign away her rights to start a new life without the burden of motherhood. And I'd spent those 9 years making sure that when her greed finally brought her back, every door would be locked, every escape route blocked, every lie documented and disproven. People like Jennifer thought they could have it both ways. Abandon responsibility when it was inconvenient, claim rights when it became profitable. I'd proven them wrong. Sophia and I drove home that evening. We ordered pizza and watched her favorite movie. Just a normal Tuesday night because that's what I'd given her. 9 years of normal Tuesday nights of stability and love, and someone who never left. That was my revenge, really. Not the courtroom victory, not the legal fees, not even Jennifer's humiliation. My revenge was raising her daughter better than she ever could have. My revenge was Sophia calling me dad. My revenge was 9 years of memories Jennifer would never have. She'd signed away her daughter for a fresh start and dinner reservations. I'd turned that daughter into someone amazing. And that was justice. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.